Good.
I'm good on my end. How are you doing?
I'm good, man.
All set up over there?
Yeah. I'm good. I'm good.
What's going on, man? Well, thank you. I just want to thank everybody for tuning into the Leeds Edutainment Podcast. We got very special guests, hip hop legend, Masta Ace. How are we doing today?
Pretty good, man. How you doing?
Good. Well, I appreciate you making the time to do this. We've got the show this Friday. First show back for you here in Boston. For many of us, first show back, myself included. Slain, OT the Real, XL the Beast, all to Sinclair this Friday.
Been
And
too long.
how you feeling about it?
I'm just excited to get back on the stage. I kind of want to see how my body reacts to not being up there for it's been 16, 18 months almost, I guess. February 2020 was my last show. So however many months that is, a year plus. So I just want to see if I can, if I get that muscle memory going and I get right back to my groove, or if I'm a little bit winded more than I normally am, because I haven't been doing the same cardio, because once the gym shut down, I wasn't on my cardio routine like I used to be. But I just been riding bikes, and that's not the level of cardio that I usually do. But we'll see where I'm at.
Yeah, I was about to say, I saw you riding bikes. Is that a new thing you take pretty seriously now, or is that an old hobby?
No, that's really new. I mean, I got a bike for Father's Day 3 years ago, like a mountain bike. And, it was a cool gift because I just wanted to start getting out a little bit in the spring and stuff like that. But I didn't ride the mountain bike, but maybe, I don't know, in 3 years, I probably rode it 5-6 times. And so when the pandemic hit and everything was closed, I was like, man, I've been stuck in the house for months. Like, I need to do something. Just get other than going. I was pretty much just going grocery shopping and then right back to the house. Like, never. And so then I found out about a bike crew out near me, out here in Jersey, called Trendsetters Bike Crew, and I went to one of their rides. I took my mountain bike and rode with them, and that mountain bike was like a 7-speed, and I was on there pedaling forever, just nonstop, just trying to keep up. And after that one ride with them, I said, I gotta get me a different bike. And a couple of weeks later, I upgraded my bike. I found a used bike because there was no new bikes out there. So I found a new bike, a hybrid, and I've joined them for their very next ride out in the Jersey Shore. And ever since then, I've been riding with them almost every weekend.
That's dope. I saw a picture of you and Havoc in there. Havoc from Mobb Deep in that crew.
Yeah. I just I saw him post that he was riding somewhere near his house, and I said, yo, I ride every weekend. You should ride with me sometime. He's like, I'm with it. Like, he was like, immediately, I'm with it. Let me know. So I invited him to our ride 2 weeks ago at Central Park, and he came. He actually bought a bike the day before. He had a mountain bike, but I told him, yo, that mountain bike gonna have you struggling. And he bought a real nice road bike or a gravel bike, and he came out that first day, and he actually rode with them. I couldn't ride with them this past weekend. He rode with them. They gave him a jersey and everything, so he official tissue.
Nice. How many miles do you guys do?
So the longest ride I've done with them, which was maybe a month ago in Philly, we did 50 miles. That's the longest I'd ever ridden on a bike, 50. Up to that point, it was like 32, 33. So I did 50, but on my new bike, I have a gravel bike now, nice one. And 50 on that bike was cool. It wasn't like I wasn't sore, I wasn't tired, nothing.
Nice.
A lot of it is the bike, but typically we go 25 to 30 on a weekend ride. And sometimes if it's more than that, they'll always tell you, we're doing 40 today, or we're doing 50 today. But 50 is the longest I've rode.
What's the difference between a gravel bike? I've never heard of a gravel bike. I know mountain bikes. I don't know gravel bikes.
So you have a few different. You have BMX bikes. That's what the bikes they do the tricks on with the pegs and all that.
Yep.
Then you have mountain bikes, which have the big tires, and those are for real wide handlebars.
That's what I have.
Yeah. And then it goes to road bikes, which is really, those are made for asphalt, straight up, like skinny wheels. And they usually have a higher gear ratio than those other bikes. So when you're on hills and stuff like those bikes eat up the asphalt, like, and they go fast. Like, those bikes move. And then so the gravel came out a couple years ago. The road bike's been around for a long time, but the gravel bikes are fairly recent. And basically what a gravel bike is, it's a road bike, so it has the ability to perform well on asphalt, but it has slightly wider tires so that you could actually take it off road. It's like with those road bikes, the tires are so skinny on most of them. If you kind of go off road on some, on some bumpy streets, you could blow a tire like easy on those bikes.
Yep.
But the gravel bike is a little more rugged. It has a little bit more clearance too. So if you go off road, you got more clearance under the wheel. This is all stuff I learned literally within the last year, just reading and researching and watching YouTube videos. So that's the difference. I kind of wanted a gravel because sometimes I ride on trails as opposed to the streets, and I'm not a big highway rider. Like these guys be on like open road, and I can't do open road because I get tired, man. Like them hills and stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I would rather be on just. I'd rather just be in the streets with the traffic.
Yeah. Well, all right, that's great. I don't think anyone was expecting us to go into mountain bikes for as long as we did, but it is good for the health. So, and I got into it recently too, so I'm actually very interested. But well, let's take people back though on some hip hop shit. Brownsville, growing up, right?
Brownsville, Brooklyn, man.
Nice.
The projects, Howard Houses. That was the name of my projects. Brownsville has somewhere around, I don't know, 10 or 12 different housing projects, all kind of crunched into one really small area.
Yeah.
You walk 3 blocks and you're in another housing project. You walk another block and you're in another housing project. You cross the street, it's a different housing project. And so that's what Brownsville is kind of made up of. There's tenement houses and stuff like that on the side streets too. But for the most part, it's highly populated, and of course, a higher population in a small area, you're going to and poverty, crime is going to be the result typically, and that's what that's what you kind of get in the Ville, and it's kind of always been that. It's always had that reputation. I ain't gonna say it's always been that way, but it's always had that reputation.
Yeah, it's arguably probably the ruggedest section of New York, right?
Arguably.
It depends who you ask.
I'll say this about Brownsville. It's probably Brownsville and East New York, because they're like right next door to each other. Yeah. Probably the two areas of Brooklyn that will be gentrified the slowest, because it's so far from the city, and there's so many housing projects that you're not going to get a lot of, yuppies trying to buy a house out there. It's just, it's not feasible, at least not right now.
Yeah. So growing up there, where did the hip hop start? When did you start taking the art form serious?
Well, I wasn't taking it seriously. It was just really what we did in the neighborhood. I was about 12 years old. The older guys in the neighborhood, they had turntables and speakers, and they would bring them out to the park in the summertime. And those are kind of like my first memories. And it wasn't even really hip hop yet. It was disco, was what they were all spinning. Because hip hop records hadn't been made yet. So they were basically playing like Chic and Donna Summer and stuff like that. And I would go out to the parks and watch the older guys DJ. And then every now and then somebody would get on the mic when one of the breaks would come on, and they would do a little rhyming and stuff. So that was my first exposure to it. I probably was like 12 years old. Yeah.
So how old are you when you started rapping?
I probably didn't start rapping until I was in 8th grade, 7th or 8th grade, because we were inspired by the DJing that was going on in the park, and of course there were a lot of tapes that were floating around New York City. That's how everybody kind of shared information. It was through cassette tapes. So if you had a cassette tape of a party that happened in the Bronx, I would dub it from you, and so I'd have it. And the tapes is how it spread. So there were a lot of tapes of DJs around New York City that were doing parties, and they were cutting and scratching up different break beats. And so we were like, "Oh, that's dope." Wonder how we did that. We should do our own crew. So we put together a DJ crew and bought. I had a turntable, another guy had a turntable, another guy had a mixer, and we just kind of formed our little crew, our little group of DJs. And probably the first 6 months or so of DJing with these guys, like 4 or 5 of us, I just realized that out of the 5 guys, I maybe was like fourth best. Like I was like struggling with I mean, I was okay. I could do the fast back and forth, good times, good times, good times, but the scratching part, the using both hands, all of that was a struggle for me. And so I was like, well, you know, we started making tapes, and I was like, well, maybe I'll put some vocals on the tapes, because of the tapes that were coming from the Bronx started to have vocals and rap on them. So I was like, I'll add to our tapes by putting some vocals on it, and that's really how it started.
Nice. You know, it's a lot of people, I didn't realize this till recently, that you have actually ties to New England. You went to University of Rhode Island for college, correct?
Yes, I did. That's correct. 4 years at URI, but even before college, I lived in Boston for 2 years.
Oh, no. When was that?
Fourth grade and fifth grade.
Interesting.
I lived in Malden.
Ah, Malden, yeah. That's a little outside of Boston, but great.
Yeah,
It's a good area.
Yeah, I lived in Malden, and
How'd you end up over there?
So my mom had a job opportunity at Harvard, or on the campus of Harvard, and she was working with a company over there, and it looked like, you know, she was going to probably get a full gig there. So she moved out there to see kind of where this job was going to go, and she spent 2 years in Boston, like trying to see how that job thing was going to work out. Now, had that job worked out, I would have stayed in Boston. I would have been, from fourth grade, I would have been living in Boston. The job didn't work out. The job didn't work out, so I went back to Brooklyn.
Oh man, no shit. I didn't know that. That's crazy.
That's crazy, right?
Right. So then you end up in college in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, am I correct? You meet Marl?
I met Marley the summer before my junior year in college.
Yeah.
Because I had won a contest that previous winter at the skating rink, and first prize was 6 hours of studio time. And so that summer after school ended, I finally got in touch with him and went out to his apartment / studio in Queensbridge Projects, and I did my first couple of hours of studio time with him.
What was that like, the experience meeting him at that time?
You know, you didn't really know what people necessarily looked like back then, because there wasn't like a lot of music videos and stuff like. So that first session, I could tell that he was kind of annoyed that he had to do this session with me. I could tell that. So he put me in one of the back bedrooms to work on drum programming with MC Shan. That was that's the first day I met MC Shan. The first day I met Marley, I met Shan.
Yeah.
And so he had me in a room with Shan, and Shan was tapping on the drum machine, trying to figure some stuff out. But he admitted to me years later, like he said, if Marley put you in there with me, he was just trying to get rid of you, because I definitely didn't know what I was doing. So that's what it was, man.
So how did you go from that into joining the Juice Crew?
So I guess a couple of the demos that I recorded kind of caught Marley's ear, or he felt like, oh, this kid's kind of dope, you know. Mm-hmm. He was working on a compilation album, Marley Control, and he kind of just said to me that next summer, he's like, yo, I want you to be on my album. And he took a couple of the demos that I had recorded and put those on his album. And so being on that album exposed me to being in the photo shoot, which exposed me to eventually being on the symphony. And that's really how it all happened.
Right. How did you feel being on the symphony at that time with those caliber of MCs? I
mean, it wasn't supposed to be in the first place. My vocals weren't supposed to get kept. I was just really just in there to warm up the mic and spit a little something, but it was never a plan for my vocals to be kept on the song. So I didn't have a sense of, oh, this is an amazing opportunity. You gotta remember, this was '89, so Kane's album was out, but G-Rap, I don't think G-Rap had even dropped. I don't think G-Rap had dropped his album yet. But my point is, at that time, they weren't who they became. They were. I knew who they were. I knew who Kane was, because Kane was like one of the dopest dudes. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like they were these like huge mega stars that everybody was going, you know, that knew about. They weren't national figures in hip hop yet. So we,
Right.
we were all kind of coming up at the same time. Kane was just a little bit more established because he had songs with Biz Markie, and he had a couple of a 12-inch on Prism, I think, Get Into It and stuff like that. So, his reputation definitely preceded him when I met him. His album hadn't come out yet. When I did the day I did Symphony, his album hadn't dropped yet.
But you knew that these guys were good, though, and you're stepping in there. And,
yeah. I knew Kane was good. I knew G Rap was good because I heard G Rap on. He had a song Rockers Island that was dope as hell. He had a song called I'm Fly that was. These are all singles.
Yeah.
That were dope as hell. And I knew Craig from Shout Rap, and I actually met Craig the first day of my session. With my first session with Marley, I met Craig that day. So me and Craig were already cool and kind of like lightweight hanging out.
Nah. So that album drops, and then what? You transition into your first solo album after that. Take a Look Around, correct?
Well, after the album dropped and the video dropped, and people knew my name, I thought it was going to be automatic. I'm getting an album deal, and they were like, "No, you're not just getting an album. It don't work like that. You gotta drop a single first, and we'll see how the single does. If the single does XYZ, then we'll roll it into an album." So the first, my 12-inch was on Prism. It was a song called Together. That was the A side, and the B side was a song called Letter to the Better. And to everybody's surprise, up at Cold Chillin', the B side, Letter to the Better, actually blew up in London unexpectedly. Like, it wasn't. I mean, those songs were getting lightweight play in the States, but it wasn't making no noise. It was London that gravitated to that song. It became like one of like the big like records that you dropped in the clubs in London in 89, right before 90. And so they found out that they heard through their UK connections that, yo, you got a hit on your hands with this Letter to the Better, and then I think that's what really kind of pushed them to go forward with the album deal.
Both those joints produced by Marley?
Yes.
Nice.
I would say co-produced by me, even though I don't think I got co-production credit at that time. But to be fair, the loop, both of those loops I brought to the studio. And that's how our relationship worked on my first album. For the most part, it was records from my mom's collection or my uncle's collection that I brought up to his house. I would come with a shopping bag full of records with ideas. Yo, I want to rap over this, and I like these drums, or I like this part. I want to rap over this part, and I would tell him that. He would grab the record, do his magic, put his funk on it, and then it would become a song.
Yeah. That's very important. I mean, your mother's collection, that's obviously paved the way for a lot of hits.
All my early stuff was my mom's records.
Yeah, that's great. It's great here. So Take a Look Around comes out. I want to bring it up because you have the song with Biz on there, but he's not really on there.
Yeah.
You had because we'll talk about Biz Markie, rest in peace. But you tried to get him on there. Talk about what happened in your relationship with Biz on that situation.
So first of all, that beat was one of Marley's beats, right?
Yeah.
And I heard it. I was at his studio one day. I heard the beat and I was like, "What's up with that? Can I get that?" And he's like, "Nah, that's for Biz."
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." Once he said this for Biz, I know I have no wins. I'm not gonna get that beat. That's Biz was already a big name.
Yep.
So I forgot about it. And then months later, I'm kind of hearing through talks, Marley talking on the phone with people and this and that. Clearly, him and Biz aren't seeing eye to eye, and Biz is not going to be working with him on his new record. And so I brought it back up again. Yo, what's up with that beat that you have for Biz? He didn't even remember the beat. we went through a bunch of tapes until we found the beat, and he's like, "Oh, this? Oh yeah, you can have this." And so I was like, "Dope." So to me, the beat sounded like a Biz beat. So I was like, "Yo, it would be kind of cool if it was me and Biz over this, rapping over this." And he's like, "Yo, if you can get him to do it." So I was like, "All right." So I Marley explained that the way Biz and Kane worked was that Kane would write the rhyme, then spit the rhyme, and then Biz would listen to it over and over, memorize it, then come in and record it.
Right.
So I was like, okay, so I'll write my rhymes, spit my rhyme, and then I'll spit Biz's rhyme. But because we're kind of going back to back, in order for him to know where I end and he starts, I'm going to change my voice a little bit so he'll know, oh, this is when I rap.
Right, right.
So I recorded the whole thing that way with my verse, and then his verse with my voice changed. And then I presented it to Biz. I was like, yo, this is the song I want us to do together. He's like, yo, it's dope, and I'll do the song, but I'm not coming to Marley's. And I'm like, so what am I supposed to do? He's like, yo, tell Marley to give you the 2-inch reel, bring it to my studio, and we'll record it. So now I'm caught in between their little issue. Yeah. And so I went back to Marley. I was like, yo, Biz said he'll do the song, but I just need you to give me the 2-inch reel. He was like, hell no. If he can't come here to record it, then we're going to just leave the song like it is. I'm like, what? And he's like, yo, it's already dope. You people going to think it's him anyway. Let's leave it like that. And I was like, this is corny. I don't like this. But I'm new. I'm a brand new artist. So for me to be pushing back wasn't probably the wisest thing. I'm learning. I don't know anything. I'm like, all right, you got records out. I got no records out. Right. You say it's cool. So we left the song like that.
Was Biz pissed?
I don't know if he was pissed. I never got to have that conversation with him. Yeah. But I know that he pissed. I don't know if I could say pissed, but I know that he felt a certain way about it. Yeah. But he never really said anything directly to me. I heard through other people that he felt a certain way about it. And, what am I going to do? That wasn't the plan. That wasn't what I was trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, producers, sometimes artists, it gets ugly a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
It's personal and whatnot. Who knows? But did you guys were cool later though? You and Biz got cool later, or?
We were never not cool. He was one of my label mates who I would see up at the label sometimes. He was always cracking jokes. Yeah. And I learned a lot watching him on stage. Because I got an opportunity to be at a lot of those co-chilling shows. The most memorable being the one at the Polo Theater, which I think was in '89, right after Kane's album dropped. Kane headlined that show, but it was really a co-headline situation. But the whole entire co-chilling roster was on the show. I didn't even have an album out yet. I just did my verse to Symphony for like 2 seconds and then went right back off the stage, and that was it for me. And the rest of the night, I just got to sit up in the balcony and had a bird's eye view of really two of the best performers in hip hop at that time, back to back, Biz and then Kane.
Yeah, dope. Well, rest in peace, Biz. It's a big loss for hip hop.
Definitely.
Let's talk about the next phase of your career, the Masta Ace INC Incorporated. Yeah. Let's talk about how that all started and your mindset in making those albums.
So, me and the label wanted me and the Biz to be the first single, which I was adamantly against. But Benny Medina, who was the head of Warner Brothers at that time, Warner Brothers Black Music, he basically made the statement that if me and the Biz isn't the first single, don't expect to get another single. And so he kind of forced my hand. So when that record came out, it was a lot of I guess backlash. I know in my neighborhood I was getting clowned because the video had the puppet, and it was kind of a playful song or whatever. And it's like, yo, what's up with that puppet? You going back to the projects, the dudes is cracking jokes, and so I just wanted to get as far away from that kind of novelty, because I wasn't a novelty artist. That's not what I did. The rest of the album was very serious topics, very serious messaging and tone. That was the only kind of lighthearted record on the album. And of course, let Warner Brothers, handle business. They're gonna want to go with the lighthearted record. So when I formed Masta Ace Incorporated and I was working on that next album, Slaughterhouse, with Delicious Vinyl, my goal was to get as far away from me and the Biz as possible. So I wanted to do the hardest, grimiest, grungiest sounding record that I could do, to just make people understand that one video, that one song, that's not who I am. I'm more than that. And so that's how the whole INC Incorporated, Slaughterhouse, that whole movement came to be.
And that was a group, right? Like Paula Perry, Lord Digger. There was anybody else?
My goal was to make it a group in fans' eyes. It wasn't a group as in paperwork. Nobody else was signed but me. Right. It was my choice to incorporate other artists into what I was doing musically. It's pretty much like Dr. Dre's The Chronic, before The Chronic. So it was like me having different producers and MCs on my record, but making it sound like it was an overall, movement. So I would strategically place certain people on certain songs, have certain people do certain choruses, put your voice here, do this ad lib there. I was kind of orchestrating the whole project, and I used those artists to help get this message across of a group concept. Because at that time, we're talking '93, Cypress Hill, Funk Dubious, everybody who was selling a lot of records were all groups. There was almost no solo artists selling, and so I was like, man, we need to like kind of like push the idea of being a group, because I always felt like with a group, if you don't like the main MC, you might like the other guy, or the sidekick, or the female. There might be something else in the group and maybe they have their own sets of fans, and all those fans come to the party. That was my thinking, and why I formed that.
Yeah. Sitting on Chrome, I mean, did you foresee that being the hit that it became?
The album or the single?
Single. The album, single, whatever. I mean,
yeah,
that's a banger. I mean, that's a huge hit. When you made that, I mean, let's talk about making that one. Did you think, wow, man, this one's really gonna catch?
I think maybe you're talking about Born to Roll.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my bad. I got
Yeah. Because Sitting on Chrome was cool, but it didn't do anywhere near the numbers that Born to Roll did. Yeah. No, that was one of those, it was a remix. That's all it was. I had a song called Jeep Ass Nigga off the album. It was the first single off the Slaughterhouse album, and it did what it did. And the label was, and then we released another single, Slaughterhouse, and then I decided that I wanted to do a remix to Jeep Ass Nigga and put it on the B-side of Slaughterhouse. So I found that record. It was actually a song on Def Jam, Knowledge Me, by Original Concept. I found it in a 99-cent bin in a store somewhere in the South. I want to say Virginia. I went home, I sampled it, and I was like, oh, this could really work like in other markets. And I redid Jeep Ass Nigga over that new beat, and just kind of restructured the song. But it's the same exact rhymes, same exact flow, just to a different beat. And I had to fight, actually, Delicious Vinyl to put it as the B-side. They didn't even want to use it. They were like, no, we're on to the next single. We're on the Slaughterhouse. And I'm like, yo, just put it on the B-side. And I fought for it. I had to have a whole meeting where I'm like yelling, like, yo, just put it on there. Eventually and finally, they put the shit on the single as the B-side. They released the Slaughterhouse single. All the DJs get it everywhere across the country. Immediately, everybody flips it over, starts playing Born to Roll. And it became its own. It took on a life of its own. Unexpectedly, I didn't even expect that. I didn't expect that, but it was the 808. I used a lot of 808s. It was a super heavy bass, laden song. The rhyme was just about sound systems, and so the two things kind of went hand in hand. And it took off. The first place that it took off was the Bay Area, San Fran, KMEL, big station out there. They added it like immediately. And then from there, it just caught on like wildfire. LA was next, San Diego, Houston, Dallas, Chicago. It started getting played everywhere except New York. But and then now they're like, oh, we got to shoot a video for this. So the song that they didn't even want even on the 12-inch, now they want to go shoot a video for it. So we shot a video for it. The video wound up taking it to a whole nother level. And all of a sudden, I had my first ever radio, quote unquote, radio record with that Born to Roll song.
It's crazy. You're like the B-side king.
It's not on purpose, but I always love the B-side Wins Again by Public Enemy. I always loved that song.
Yeah, a lot of great B-sides out there. So when does Masta Ace Incorporated end? Because you go on a hiatus after this, and what happened?
We did two albums.
Yeah, so, the two albums. You go away. You put on pause. What happened?
What happened was, I dropped Sitting on Chrome, which was kind of like the ode to the car culture album.
Yep.
And the label kind of dropped the ball when I dropped that album, because what happened was they lost their distribution like right after the first single and video came out. We're getting like the INC Ride was the first single off that album, and we were in heavy rotation in like 14 markets, and so we're getting all this airplay, and right in the midst of all of that airplay, they lose their distribution and they have to renegotiate a whole new distribution deal.
Damn.
So when they finally inked a new deal, which was like a month or two later, now they got to pull all the records off the shelves, repackage, and re-release them with the new imprint. But I lost all my momentum, and so I just became really annoyed, and I wanted to get back to home. I wanted to get back home because I was signed to Delicious. They were in LA. I never lived in LA, contrary to popular belief, but a lot of people thought that I moved there. I never moved there, but there was just an overall sentiment in New York that I was like officially a West Coast dude. Like I was down with them, and this is like at the height of the East-West, tension. So it was like either you down with us or you down with them. And from the looks of your records and your videos, you must be down with them. And so I wanted to get back. So I renegotiated a new deal with Big Beat, a label in New York, and we signed a new deal with Big Beat to come back to New York and to be on a label in New York. I started working on my new album with Big Beat right around 96, 97. I worked on that album for like 2 years, and then in the midst of the bad boy movement and all the records that they were putting out and killing the radio with all of this R&B stuff, the label was like, "Oh man, you gotta come, you gotta bring some, some of this stuff. You gotta do songs like this." And I'm like, "That's not what I do." And so we definitely didn't see eye to eye on what the music needed to sound like. They were trying to push me in a particular direction I didn't want to go, and so ultimately the album got shelved, and I got released. And so from really 96 to 2001, I was like, I'm done with the industry. Like I'm done. I actually had a resume printed up. I was going around trying to pass my resume around, see if I can get a job at a label. I started shopping beats. I said maybe I can do it from the production side, because I had, I produced Born to Roll, I produced INC Ride, I produced Sitting on Chrome. And those are all three major singles from that album. So I figured I could like take my production and start getting some work that way. And so that's what happened those years. I spent those next 3-4 years just trying to get behind the scenes and get a foothold behind the scenes. Had I got a job like at a label, had somebody given me opportunity at a label, like the rest of the next 20 years of music never would have happened.
But that didn't happen. And your comeback record, which I think is a phenomenal record, Disposable Arts. Talk about that album, making that album.
That was to be my magnum opus. I really thought that it was going to be the last hurrah for me, because after not having a record out for 5 years, almost 6 years, it seemed like it was, the writing was on the wall. This is going to be it, so I was like, okay, if this is going to be it, I want to go in the studio and I want to make the exact album that I have in my head. Like I don't want any outside influences. I don't want any labels telling me what to do. So I was independent. I had 2 partners, Filthy Rich and DJ Rob, and they supported me in letting me make the album I wanted to make. And so I went in. I said, I know exactly. I had the whole vision. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I created this whole album. And none of them, neither Rich or Rob, really saw the vision while it was happening. They were like, well, where's this going? Like, what? And it wasn't until all the skits and the songs and the sequence of songs all got put together that it was like, oh, this is actually dope.
Right.
And we released it in October of 2001. Right, it dropped right after the World Trade Center events happened in 2001, and I went to Europe. I went to it came out Halloween, but I went to Europe October 20. No, I'm sorry. I went to Europe September 22nd. So 11 days after World Trade Center, I was on a plane to Europe. Every other group from the States canceled their tours. Nobody was flying.
Yeah.
I was the only one that was like, because I knew this was it for me. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
yeah, you're back against the wall.
I'm like, yo, I'm scared. Yes, I'm scared. All that, but it's if I don't do this tour, maybe it's really over before I can even give it a fair shot.
Right.
So we got on that plane on September 22nd, flew to Europe. No other shows happening. The turnouts were incredible. We did 26 shows in 30 days or something like that.
Was it just you touring? Who was on that tour?
So it was me. Punching Words was the openers,
yeah.
and then I brought Strickland, and my DJ was DJ AV.
So basically, just you and crew, you and your crew.
And they weren't my crew yet. They were just guys they were featured on my album, but I didn't know them like that. That was my first time ever touring with them, doing shows with them. We actually got to know each other on that first tour.
Oh, okay. So that was the introduction.
Yeah.
Because you guys are tight now. You've worked with a lot of those guys a lot since.
Yeah, they've all been on my albums and stuff like that, and it made sense to bring them on the road because they were Punching Words was on 2 songs on Disposable Arts, and Strickland was on 2 songs on Disposable. So it made the most sense to bring them because I could perform more of the records, and so that's how it kind of came about. But it seemed like it was all kind of meant to be the way it all went down.
Do you think this is the album where you really start going into like the storytelling as like a real strong part of you, and like the skits and everything? Is this really where it starts to really get strong, you think?
This is where I figured it all the way out. I was always trying to do it.
Right.
From Slaughterhouse on, I was always trying to create narratives and characters and put these interludes in between songs and create a story. It wasn't until Disposable that I really figured out how to do a full narrative from beginning of the album to the end of the album.
Right.
And it just all came together perfectly the way I was envisioning it in my head. So it took a couple of albums to get it right.
Yeah. And then from there, Long Hot Summer?
Long Hot Summer. Long Hot Summer was right at 04. So 01, and then we toured for 3 years off Disposable was like the most unexpected reaction. And for me, it's my most important album because that one album has extended my career for over 20 years now. Because of that, if I don't drop that album, the rest of what's the last 20 years doesn't happen. I'm not touring the world the way I have been.
And you know what's crazy is that album doesn't have a bigger hit on it than Born to Roll or some of your other joints, right? Like that's because it was the album.
It was indie. It was an indie record. So there was no machine. There was no machine behind it. Right. There was no machine. We didn't even do videos. There was no videos off Disposable Arts.
No, I know.
But this was the time of MySpace and of Napster, and file sharing, and so to our surprise, when we hit the stage in September of 2001, people knew the words to songs. The album hadn't even dropped yet.
Yeah.
But people knew the songs, which was crazy to me. But that's what was happening. As bad as the file sharing probably was for the labels, it was really, really big for independent artists like myself.
Yeah. And that was a big era where major artists like you were shifting independent. There was the big independent boom that was happening. It was a great era. I love that era. Yeah. One of my favorite eras, to be honest. A lot of people say the 90s. I'm like, early 2000s independent era. That's right up there with me, man.
Yeah. I'm with you.
I also want to talk about right around that time. You get, I don't want to speak on a sore spot, but I think it's important that you get diagnosed with MS. Correct?
Yeah, that was
2000.
2000. That was right before I did Disposable. So going into it with that mentality of this probably going to be the last hurrah, that was all in my head at the same time. Like, I don't know what this means. I'm probably I might not be walking in 2 years, 3 years. I didn't know what was going to happen. So I just went into it. And that's what really made me just kind of give it my all on that album. I was like, this is going to be the magnum opus because going forward, I don't know what the future is going to hold. So let's go all out on this record right here and make it as dope as I want it to be.
Yeah. And you've been able to maintain decent health through this whole thing, correct? I mean, you take care of yourself. You're pretty diligent. I've seen you eat, and I've seen you at the shows. You're like on your fitness and all that. You really
Yeah.
try to take care of your body. That the key to your longevity in this?
I mean, I believe so. I believe so. There's no real answers. They don't know. They don't know much about this disease, really.
Oh, it's too bad.
But I believe that my changes in diet, and my commitment to exercise has played a big part, because I noticed during the pandemic, when I wasn't able to go to the gym and before I started riding bikes, when I was less active, I felt my body getting weaker. I felt my limbs starting to get weak, and I was like, man, like I can't stop. I have to continuously work out. I have to continuously be moving and doing something. And the diet change, which was something that took place over the course of those 20 years. Little by little, I changed my diet.
What do you eat? Like, what's the change?
I have a plant. I'm strictly a plant-based diet now.
No meat at all, huh?
No meat, no fish. But I did it in steps. You know, I didn't eat pork for many years, but beef. I was still eating beef, chicken, and fish. And then one year, about one birthday, about I don't know, 9 years ago or something, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna cut beef out. I'm gonna see how I feel without eating beef. So I stopped eating beef on my birthday like 9 years ago. And then I just went chicken and fish for probably 4 or 5 years. And then I decided I was going to just cut out chicken. I cut out chicken in 2017, maybe. Cut out chicken, and then it was just fish. Then I was pescatarian for 3 years or so. And then I just cut out fish on my birthday, 2019. I cut out, no, 2018. I cut out fish, and that was the final step. I was already not eating dairy. So yeah, those were the steps. It was a gradual process to get to where I am right now, which is vegan.
That's great, man. That's great. I also want to talk about, you still have, you get really consistent from here. I mean, you put out an album with Edo G. This album with MF Doom that's recently passed away, did he produce the whole album, Sons of Yvonne? Is that, how did that happen?
So all those beats are his beats.
Okay, previously released beats, right? Like he already recorded them.
Correct. They were rapped over by other people. Some were just instrumentals, some were interludes.
Okay. I wasn't sure exactly.
Yeah, he released all of his instrumentals that he ever made. He released them in a I don't know how many CD set it was, but it was called Special Herbs. It had like several volumes.
Yeah. Okay. Now I know it.
Probably like 80 different beats or something like that, 100 beats. I don't know how many beats it were, but I got my hands on about 50 of them from a friend. And I was just riding with them because I didn't like listening to the commercial radio. So I would just ride with the beats, and I just started getting ideas for songs while I'm riding with them. And I was going to do a free mixtape, and just rap over those beats and throw it out there just in between projects, you know.
Yeah.
And then we had a meeting with Fat Beats Records, and my partner Filthy Rich mentions, Ace is gonna do this mixtape over Doom beats and just throw it out there for free. And they were like, what do you mean free? No, hell no. We can sell that. And so then it became a different project. Once they said they were gonna invest money in it, then I couldn't just do kind of throwaway verses. Just, you know, I was just gonna do kind of like just some bar work.
Yep.
But once they said, you know, budget and all of this and marketing and all of that, so I gotta give y'all a real album. I gotta do it right. So I created an album that was dedicated to the memory of my moms.
Yeah, that's great. So you got clearance on all that. They got clearance to use the beats, apparently.
Yeah. Doom got paid same as me.
Oh, good.
You know?
Good.
Yeah.
Good. That's so. I also want to talk about your relationship that you built with Marco Polo.
Yeah.
This is a great relationship that's still there. And let's talk about how meeting Marco and how that all happened.
We met at a studio in Manhattan called the Cutting Room. I was there for a session with somebody else, and when I was leaving, you know, this little skinny white kid comes up to me. He's like, "Hey man, I do beats," and he handed me a CD. I was like, "All right, dope." I made sure he had his number, his email on there, and I put it in my knapsack, and kept it moving. So when I got home or whenever it was, back then I would listen to everything anybody gave me because I was always looking for those gems, those jewels, those because there's always these cats that were just like nobody knew about, and I would find these guys. So I was like, I'll listen to everything. Yep. So I listened to it when I got home. I was like, yo, this kid actually is kind of dope with the drum programming. Like because a lot of producers out there that they pick nice loops, and then when the drums come in, it just you just don't. It's not there. Yep. The way the drums swing, it just doesn't work. And you can have the dopest loop, but if the drums aren't programmed nice, it doesn't work. And so I heard talent. I heard drum programming talent when I heard it, and I was like, and I hit him up. I was like, yo, you got something here. I said, I didn't pick nothing for my next record, but send me some more stuff. And the next batch he sent me, I wound up, I believe Nostalgia was on that next CD. The song from my album, the song with rapper Noid called "Do It Man" from my Long Hot Summer album was on that batch. And there was another beat on there that's actually on our new album. So this was all the way back in 2006 or 7.
Oh wow, it goes about far that back.
Huh? Yeah, that far back. 2006, I think. And so there's a song on our new album called "You and I." That beat was on that original batch of beats that I held it all those years. I was like, yo, I'm gonna use
the first CD. It was on the first beat CD?
It was on the second with the second.
Oh, the second one. Oh.
Yeah. Pretty sure it was the second one.
That's dope.
Yeah, man.
So then he becomes your DJ too, right? Like he I mean, every show we've done, Marco's basically been DJing for you as well.
So he doesn't like the term DJ because he wants to give respect to the other DJs that actually DJ, that actually touch turntables and backspin. So because he's a producer, he likes to trigger the music from a drum machine.
Right.
So he does everything through his controller, which looks like an MPC. And he came up with this. So I never saw this before. I started using it after him. But once we put the album out together, automatically, like, we're a team, so we're gonna roll together. But even before that, he did hold me down on a bunch of shows when other people weren't available. Like sometimes my guy Marl would be with me on the road, and then it was pretty much Marl. Yeah, after everything, because I worked with AV, and then I worked with DJ Flo Fader, and then it became Marl, and Marl was like my regular guy. But if Marl couldn't make the trip, I would hit Marco. He would be my next person. Yo, Power can't go. Can you go? He's like, I'll go. Yeah. So we started doing shows like that, and that's really how the chemistry between me and him started.
Yeah. Let's talk about Make a Brooklyn Story. First of all, the title, the way you spelt it, I saw somewhere it was an old Jewish way of writing it or something.
Nah, it was Jewish. It was a Dutch.
Dutch. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was some other. I thought I remember it was Jewish. I'm sorry.
Nah, it was
the Dutch way.
The Dutch way. So there's a city in the Netherlands called Brooklyn, spelt that way.
Yeah.
And when as you know, the Dutch were some of the colonizers who came over to the North America to settle. And so they settled in New York, this part of the country first. And so that's why you have the Holland Tunnel. There's a whole bunch of names in the New York City area that are straight up Dutch words.
Damn, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no. And so I knew that I wanted to call the album A Brooklyn Story, but I didn't like how it looked on paper. I was like, because it just looked too regular. It looked too typical.
Yeah,
I felt like I saw that a million times, and it's not going to look dope on a shirt, So I decided to just basically put in Brooklyn, New York, in Wikipedia, and just started reading the history of Brooklyn, and I found out all of that stuff about the Dutch and the other spelling, and I hit Marco and I wrote it out. I said, how does it look? And I put A Brooklyn Story spelled like that. And he's like, well, explain it first. And I explained it. He's like, that's actually kind of dope. And so we decided to go with the Dutch spelling, which actually, caught the attention of a lot of people over in Europe because they were aware of it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Talk about some of these tracks on there, man. I mean, this album's a scorcher. How do you feel about this one in comparison to the rest of your catalog? I mean, this one was full of heat.
I love this album. I love this album.
Let's talk about making it. So
we made the whole thing in Marco's crib, in his bedroom studio, if you will. Um, and he lives in a 5-floor walk up. So every time I went to a session, I had to roll my eyes because I had to walk up 5 flights of stairs.
Yeah, but you're big into exercise.
Yeah, but it was still annoying. It's still annoying, especially after a long drive.
That's fair. That's fair.
You know, I'm in the car for an hour and a half driving in from Jersey, and now I got to walk up 5 flights of stairs.
I feel that.
But you know, the vocal booth was his bedroom, and then the actual control room was the second bedroom, and I would go back and forth from the control room to his bedroom, you know, recording vocals with sweatshirts and shit hanging around me in order to keep the sound good. Like, I mean,
I was like that, huh?
Yeah. He
That's
threw
crazy.
a couple of sweatshirts over the rooms to keep it, you know, keep the sound dampened. But it was a cool experience, and you know, he wanted me to basically relinquish the mixing duties and the sound part of it. He's like, you know, you're doing all the rhymes. At least let me be, you know, responsible for how the album sounds.
Cool.
And he had to kind of present it to me like that because he knows I'm very hands on. He's seen me do records. I'm there for every mix.
Yeah.
I'm there for mastering. You know, I'm hands on.
Yeah.
And for the first time, kind of like giving up that control and saying, okay, I'm gonna leave. But I trusted him because I heard his other records and they all sounded, they were knocking. So
yeah, I mean, the way he mixes his beats, does he mix his beats too?
Yeah, him and a friend, they you know,
yeah, they get it right.
Yeah,
they get it right.
And so basically him and his guy would mix. He would send me the mix. It wasn't like he was like, okay, it's done. He would send me the mix. What do you think? And I'd listen and be like, you know, it could be brighter, or that snare needs to be louder, or my vocals are too low, or the chorus should be whatever. Like, and so I would give him my notes, and he would go back, make those adjustments, send it again. I'd be like, yo, it's gold. Let's keep going. Right. And that's how the record was mixed. But it was actually I actually liked it because it was a little bit easier workload for me. I didn't have to be there for every single thing, you know, like I normally am for my records.
Was it hot? Was it tough relinquishing that control?
At first, but it wasn't because I heard his other records. It's not like I'd heard him.
You trusted it.
Yeah, I knew what Nostalgia sounded like. I knew what a couple other records sounded like. So I was like, he could do this. And if the first couple of mixes came back and they were shaky, I would have been like, Marco, this ain't gonna work. You gotta let me jump in here and handle this. But he handled his business, man. And the album sounds great. Yeah,
it's a classic. It was too bad because we were going to do that whole album live in Boston, and then COVID came, and I was so disappointed. It was going to be a great show.
I was looking forward to that, man.
Because just like you themed albums, I wanted a show like that. I wanted a themed show, like the whole album front to back.
I was planning. I was looking forward to it, and I had the whole kind of idea of how we were going to do it planned out. It was going to be cool.
Yeah. Well, maybe again sometime. But right now. This Friday, you and Slane, and we're back to business. And
Slane, Boston, man. First show since February 2020 for me.
I know.
For me and Marco, first show.
Great. Yeah. I'm glad it's with you. We've done so many shows together. I've done so many shows with Slane. So it's basically a family affair here in Boston.
Word.
What else you got coming up? You got anything else coming up you're working on?
New record with Marco.
Nice.
He's been patient because you know, I told him I didn't want to write the album during 2020. It was just too much swirling around, too much going on. I didn't want the album to sound depressing or angry or any of those things. And so I said we gotta wait. We gotta wait till the smoke clears a little bit before I can get my head in the right space.
Yeah.
And so we got like 2 songs recorded. I'm sitting on like 15 to 18 beats, really nice beats that I got to write to. I probably won't record to all of them, but we'll get 12 or 14 of them recorded, and that'll be the next record.
That's great. Now, is it difficult for you to come up to Boston, being such a rival of New England sports teams? Because I see you online, man.
I'm not a big rival.
You're a rival.
I'm not a big rival. I mean, I like the Knicks obviously because New York, but I always I'm a football fan before anything. So all the rest of the sports always take a backseat to
You're a
football.
big Eagles fan, aren't you?
I'm a big Eagles fan,
Yeah, yeah.
and but because I remember when New England, I remember when the Patriots were terrible.
So do I.
Yeah,
It's a very long time. Very long
yeah.
time. Same with the Red Sox.
Yeah, I remember that. So to see a team kind of like rise up, always kind of make. I always root for the underdogs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't root for the Red Sox that way, but I definitely rooted for the Patriots to just overcome the bad luck. And so when Brady started doing his thing, as much as I would, when you guys started winning like consistently, I was like, okay, time to root against these guys now. But I always respected the team and the organization and the coaches and Brady, because greatness is greatness no matter what. And if you're a sports fan, you got to appreciate greatness no matter what. Even if it's a team that is dominating your team, you got to respect it. So I always respected that team. The only team I truly hate is the Dallas Cowboys, and that's never going to change.
Everybody's got that one team they hate.
Yeah. That's
hate.
The only team I truly hate.
Well, we appreciate your greatness in hip hop, man. I really do. Your longevity, it's inspiring. You're still doing it after all these years, and man, that's the type of longevity we all aim to have.
Absolutely. Boston, whoever's on here from Boston or in the New England area, come on down to the show this Friday. Me and Slane doing our thing for the first time in a long time. It's going to be a fun night.
And that's at the Sinclair in Cambridge, Harvard Square, not the Middle East. It's the Sinclair. It's a newer, cleaner spot.
Is the Middle East still open?
Yep, it's still open. They're back in business, so we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But
yeah.
Ace, thank you so much for giving us your time today, man. I really
Absolutely,
appreciate
man.
it.
Absolutely.
And I want a podcast with thank everybody for tuning in with the Leedz Entertainment Podcast with Masta Ace, and I'll see you Friday, brother.
All right, man.
All right, take care.